Everyone assumes money buys things: a bigger house, a faster car, a nicer watch that catches the light differently than the one you have now. That's the obvious answer. The one advertisements have spent decades convincing you is the whole story. But the real purchases happen somewhere quieter, somewhere most people never think to look, in the space between what money actually does and what everyone assumes it does. Let's walk through what money is really buying you, one invisible level at a time. You're standing in line at the pharmacy, and the total comes up higher than you expected, a generic medication that somehow costs more than you budgeted for this month. You glance at the other items in your basket, doing quick triage in your head, deciding what stays and what goes back on the shelf behind you. The pharmacist waits, patient but slightly distracted, already glancing toward the next customer in line before you've finished deciding. You put back the vitamins, keep the medication, and walk out feeling a specific kind of smallness that has nothing to do with the actual dollar amount and everything to do with having to choose at all. That night, you skip a phone call from a friend because you know the conversation will eventually drift toward weekend plans you can't currently afford to be part of. Here's the first hidden purchase nobody mentions. At this level, money isn't buying objects, it's buying the simple right to stop calculating. A luxury so basic you don't even recognize it as a luxury until it's finally available to you. You hit a small milestone in savings, nothing dramatic, just enough that an unexpected expense doesn't trigger the old familiar panic anymore. Your car needs new brakes, $400 you didn't plan for, and instead of spiraling, you simply pay it and move on with your day. An emotional non-event that would have wrecked your entire week a year earlier. A friend mentions she's trying to save too, and for the first time, money becomes something you can discuss out loud without feeling exposed, a strange, quiet relief in simply not hiding anymore. That night, you sleep through till morning without waking at 3 a.m. to mentally recheck numbers that haven't changed since you last checked them. The deeper truth surfacing here is the one nobody puts in advertisements. This stage isn't buying comfort, it's buying silence. Specifically, the disappearance of that low, constant hum of dread you'd stopped even noticing you were carrying. You pay off your last lingering debt, the one that's been quietly draining a portion of your income every month for years, without you fully registering the weight of it. The final payment clears, and a strange thing happens days later. Your credit card company raises your limit, unprompted, simply because your behavior changed before you'd even processed the shift yourself. At a family dinner, someone jokes about you finally being debt-free, and underneath the joke sits something real, a quiet pride in finishing something difficult that most people start and never actually complete. A relative who used to gently lecture you about spending now asks for your advice instead, a small but complete reversal you didn't see coming. The realization settling in here is one most people miss entirely. Debt was never just costing you money. It was costing you a small percentage of decision-making power every single month, a portion of your own life that technically belonged to someone else. Paying it off didn't make you richer. It made you, for the first time in years, the only person with a vote on where your money actually goes. You build a real emergency fund, 3 months of expenses sitting untouched. And the first thing that changes isn't financial at all. It's how you sleep, deeply, without the old habit of running worst-case scenarios through your head before drifting off. At work, rumors of layoffs move through your department, and you watch coworkers' faces tighten with a fear you remember intimately, but no longer feel yourself. A strange, slightly guilty distance settling in where panic used to live. A friend going through a sudden job loss calls, not for money, just to talk, and you realize, with quiet surprise, that you've become the calm voice in someone else's financial storm. A role reversal nobody assigns you on purpose. You don't mention the fun to anyone, partly humility, partly a quiet instinct that announcing it would change how people treat you before you're ready for that change. Here's the hidden purchase revealing itself at this level. You're not buying wealth yet, you're buying distance from catastrophe, the simple, profound difference between something going wrong and something going wrong while you have options. You start investing consistently, automatically, into something boring and diversified that you don't have to think about daily, and the first time the market drops sharply, you feel the old fear rise exactly as expected. But this time, you don't sell. You don't even check the account for several days, partly discipline, partly avoidance, and when you finally look, the number has already recovered without ever needing your panic in the first place. A coworker who's invested for years overhears you mention an index fund, and his posture shifts immediately, leaning in, suddenly treating you like someone worth discussing strategy with instead of someone needing the basics explained. At a family gathering, an older relative who controls most financial conversations asks your opinion for the first time, and you realize, with quiet surprise, you've entered a different category in his mind entirely. The truth surfacing here is rarely said aloud. The market doesn't just reward intelligence, it rewards the unglamorous ability to stay calm while everyone else around you panics. And that calm, more than any single dollar, becomes the actual asset compounding underneath the surface. You check your portfolio one ordinary Tuesday and realize your investments earned more last month than weeks of your actual paycheck combined, a fact you read twice, convinced you've misplaced a decimal somewhere. There's no notification for this, no celebration, just a quiet line item representing something significant that says almost nothing about itself. You mention it carefully to a friend, bracing for an awkward reaction, and he simply nods. Yeah, that's how compounding starts. Delivered so casually, it somehow makes the moment feel even stranger than if he'd reacted at all. Your relationship to work shifts slightly, turning down a project that used to feel mandatory, simply because the income from it no longer feels essential to your survival. Your boss notices the change in your energy before you've said anything explicit, treating you oddly with a touch more deference, the way people instinctively soften around someone who no longer seems desperate. The strange truth revealing itself here is one nobody warns you about. The moment money stops controlling your decisions is the exact moment other people start sensing it, even when you've never once mentioned a single number out loud. You calculate, almost as an experiment, what your investments alone would generate if left completely untouched, and the number that returns covers your rent entirely, without a single additional hour of work required. You don't quit anything, you don't tell anyone, but you carry that number around for days, turning it over like proof that something invisible is now working on your behalf every hour, including the ones spent asleep. At work, you negotiate a raise differently this time, calm, almost detached, because the outcome no longer determines your survival, only your trajectory going forward. Your manager notices the shift in tone immediately, the conversation feeling less like a negotiation and more like a discussion between equals who happen to disagree slightly. A friend asks how you're so relaxed about something that used to terrify you, and you struggle to explain that the calm isn't confidence exactly, it's distance. The quiet peace of knowing the worst outcome no longer threatens your entire foundation. The deeper purchase happening here, the one nobody puts a price tag on, is the slow, quiet transformation of emergencies into inconveniences, one ordinary Tuesday at a time. Your passive income finally crosses every essential expense combined, the full monthly cost of simply existing in your life. And the shift that follows isn't lifestyle, it's posture, a kind of detachment in meetings that other people start reading as confidence, though it feels closer to indifference toward outcomes that used to terrify you. You decline a project your manager assumed you'd jump at, and instead of pushing back, he simply nods, treating your refusal with a respect that wasn't there a year earlier. A relative going through financial stress calls for guidance, not money, and you realize, somewhat uncomfortably, you've quietly become the family's version of financially safe, a label nobody assigned out loud, but everyone now treats as established fact. You catch yourself scrolling job listings out of curiosity rather than necessity, the same action you used to perform out of desperation, now feeling almost like entertainment. Here's the hidden purchase revealing itself at this stage. You're not buying possessions anymore. You're buying the ability to say no, and saying no, it turns out, was always the actual luxury everything else was secretly pointing toward. You walk into your manager's office and resign without the speech you used to rehearse during difficult days, because there's no dramatic exit required when the decision was never emotional in the first place. Coworkers react with a strange mixture of admiration and discomfort, several asking, almost nervously, "But what will you actually do all day?" A question revealing more about their relationship with money than yours. The first morning without an alarm feels less euphoric than expected, and more disorienting. An unfamiliar quiet you mistake for emptiness for several weeks before recognizing it for what it actually is. A distant acquaintance, hearing about your situation secondhand, treats you differently almost instantly. Warmer, more curious, occasionally fishing for advice disguised as casual conversation. The hidden, slightly uncomfortable truth revealed here is one most people don't expect. Financial independence doesn't automatically hand you purpose. It simply removes the excuse of not having time to find one, which turns out to be a heavier responsibility than anyone warns you about in advance. You're sitting somewhere quiet, years into this version of your life, when an old friend reaches out, someone who knew you back when you put vitamins back on the shelf to afford medication instead. He's going through exactly what you went through back then, the same quiet calculations, the same small shame at choosing between two things he actually needs. You meet for coffee, and without thinking twice, you cover the bill before he even reaches for his wallet, the same way someone once should have done for you but never did. He thanks you, slightly embarrassed, and you simply say, "I remember exactly what this felt like." And in that single sentence, the entire arc of everything money was actually buying you reveals itself with total clarity. It was never about the house or the car or the number sitting quietly in an account somewhere. It was about the slow, invisible disappearance of having to choose, one threshold at a time, until choosing stopped feeling like survival and started feeling like preference instead. Money never bought happiness, not directly, not the way the advertisements promised. What it actually bought, quietly, patiently, level after level, was the simple right to stop calculating long enough to finally just live.